Wait. Before you go skipping the intro, I know you guys like doing that. Last year we came out with The Shape of Shadows. This year we're doing Sasquatch and Missing Man. Me and Wes Germer from Sasquatch Chronicles, you know the guy. We went to Ground Zero where he had his Bigfoot encounter and we investigated, we hunted the Bigfoot and crazy stuff happened. If you want to see that documentary, we are doing a world premiere on May 5th. That's Sunday, May 5th. If you want tickets to that event, link is in the description below. Go ahead and check it out, get your tickets, and go ahead and skip the intro now.
Merkel Media.
This was all circulating around the base that a giant had been killed, but no one was supposed to talk about it.
I saw 3 long, bony fingers reach up underneath the door, curl up to grab it, and then disappear.
When he came over to me, dude, he slithered over to me.
And this giant comes out of the cave and they're all frozen. And he starts running and firing at this giant. Well, the giant moves. He's got a spear in one hand and he's running really fast and spears Dan and holds him up like this. Somebody yells, shoot him in the face, shoot him in the face. They basically decapitate him.
Got closer. When he got about 15 yards away from me, I raised that 12 gauge and I blowed his head off.
I feel something pulling at my leg, and I look over and there are 2 small gray entities pulling at me. And they're literally, I'm getting pulled off the bed.
I reached my hand into this bush and I touched air. Couldn't breathe and I couldn't move because I know I'm seeing a monster.
Welcome to the show, everybody. You're listening to the Confessionals podcast. I'm your host, Tony Merkel. Thanks for being here. If you have a crazy, wild experience you want to share with me on the show, go ahead and shoot me an email. My email address is contact@theconfessionalspodcast.com. That's contact@theconfessionalspodcast.com. Or go to the website, theconfessionalspodcast.com, hit the contact section, and you can reach me that way as well. Either works for me, just get a hold of me. If you want more shows on a weekly basis, all you got to do is go to confessionalspodcast.com/join and become a member there on the website. You'll get access to the membership app that we have in the App Store. Or if you're watching on YouTube, all you got to do is hit the join button if you're on Android, or the link in the description if you're on Apple, and you become a channel member on YouTube. You get the same content anywhere you go, just 2 different locations. So if you're on the website or on YouTube, same content, 2 locations. Also, go ahead and check out merkelfilms.com. We have our documentaries there, Expedition Dogman and The Shape of Shadows, and we're coming out with our world premiere of Sasquatch and the Missing Man, where me and Wes Germer went to his infamous location where he had his Bigfoot encounters. We did a whole documentary out there, and the world premiere is on May 5th. That's Sunday, May 5th, and me and moment.co came together. That's moment.co. And we are bringing you the world premiere. You go to moment.co/Sasquatch. You can get your tickets there, and that's where you're going to actually watch the film as well on May 5th. It's going to be a live premiere digitally right there on moment.co/Sasquatch. So go ahead and get your tickets. The link is in the description of this episode. Now, in celebration of this world premiere, we have the Browns coming on, who were featured in the documentary you'll be seeing. I brought the Browns on to talk about their property because they've been on Sasquatch Chronicles numerous times throughout the years, even brought up in conversation about their property because they have uncovered some of the most astonishing evidence that is out there, in my opinion, when it comes to Bigfoot. They actually have this thing on thermal image, on video, and it's near something, a cow, that gives you a real size comparison of how big this thing was. They have a lot of vocalizations, and I think probably the best thing that they have is a broad daylight picture of a Bigfoot looking right at the camera through bushes. It's a very clear face, it's a very clear head, and we cover it all on Sasquatch and the Missing Man. And I wanted to bring the Browns on, Sara and John, to talk about their property and the evidence that they have uncovered on their property throughout the years. So let's get to Sara and John right now. All right, today we have the Browns, the infamous Browns on the show. How are you guys?
Good.
How are you?
I'm doing fantastic now that I'm talking to you guys. It's been a long journey to get here. My day started really early and it felt like it was never going to get to this point. So I'm happy to be here and chit chat with you guys. Last time I talked to you guys together, I was on your property, and it's been a wild journey for sure on my end. Just learning about everything on your property. Just to let the
Year?
What was that?
Yeah, I think that was about a year ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was about a year ago when we were out there. Anybody listening right now who maybe doesn't even who are the Browns? I'll kind of introduce to the world how I was introduced to you guys, which was through Wes Germer's podcast, Sasquatch Chronicles. I'm driving my tractor trailer through Philadelphia somewhere, and I'm listening to the Browns and their property and these journeys that, I'm hearing about. And it was one of those things where I remember hearing about the property, and then throughout the years on episodes, Wes would bring up the Browns property. And last year when we were there shooting for this coming film, Sasquatch and the Missing Man, we got to your property, and I was like, man, I'm freaking at the Browns property. I never would have thought that, like 7 years ago when I first started podcasting, that I'd be shooting a documentary there. So it was pretty surreal for me. So anybody who maybe isn't familiar with Sasquatch Chronicles and the history there, I don't really care which one of you want to talk, or you guys can bounce back and forth, but I would love to kind of introduce to the audience who you guys are in your own words, and how the property came into your possession, and how you started understanding and finding out about these beings, these creatures on the property. Was it something that you guys were aware of before you moved in? Is it something you believed in beforehand? Was it like, did you have to see it to believe it kind of thing? How did this all start unfolding for you guys?
And so when the property has been in our family, my children will be the 5th generation to live here. As far as stories outside of ours, there was my grandfather. He had a smokehouse on the property. And this is something that I heard secondhand. So I didn't hear this from him. He died when I was 3 years old. But I had heard that he was smoking fish one time. And he went out to go check it the next morning, and all the fish were raided from his smokehouse. And he saw a footprint outside of it. And so that's essentially like the first Bigfoot story, like from here, that I'm aware of. Again, I didn't hear it firsthand, but the river, which is a half mile away from us, he had talked about seeing Sasquatches when he'd be fishing with his gill net by the river as well. But I never heard any other stories from like my grandmother. She would tell people that he was just playing around, and just he was joking when he would talk about that kind of stuff, because I guess in her background, like, it was just something that she didn't want to believe in. So that's what I know about my grandfather. My dad had never mentioned about anything happening, except possibly hearing a couple of whistles that he wasn't sure what it was. But he's passed on as well. So it was years after that we were aware of things happening on our property, which we became aware in 2012 when I was going out to my car to get something, and I step outside, and there's this really foul smell. It smells similar to a skunk, but just mixed with something very foul. And I'm listening out there, and from one side of the property, I hear and then the same response coming from 300 yards away or so. I mean, so at least a couple different individuals. Based on all of the stories that I've heard around the reservation throughout my life, I did believe that was a Bigfoot immediately, because it was consistent with what other people would say, from the smell to them whistling and such.
So that's your first experience with it out on the property. was there like a bug bite for the whole looking into it and researching it? Did you ever go down that path of like, I'm going to research this now? Or was it just like, I'm going to talk about it, and it just kind of organically picked up traction and attention?
Well, I was interested in the subject before. However, after hearing that, I did start spending time outside afterwards. I mean, it was still spooky to me and such. I just made sure that like I had protection with me when I was sitting by the fire. But after that, you know, a lot of things unfolded. Mainly vocalizations and like wood knocking, rock clacking, and it was in so that was in 2012. It was October, November, sometime around then. And then the following April, Sarah and I were going to this wood line over here that we've taken you through. And as soon as we entered the tree line, right before that, we were hearing vocalizations, and I don't remember if it was knocking or rock clacking, but there was that as well as vocalizations that had like some type of chatter to it. And Sarah was kind of like pacing around when this was happening, because at the time we were trying to see if we could leave them food or leave food out. I can't say that we were necessarily feeding Sasquatches, you know, the days prior, but it was just an attempt to try to see one. And I glance over to my left, and it's about 100 feet away, and there's this one. I see it come, and then it moves behind a tree, and then it just keeps like making these like movements like that around the tree. Real fast paced. I would guess that at the distance that it was, I would guess that being hunched over, I'd guess to be around 6'8" or so. I mean, and as far as the weight goes, I couldn't tell you that. I could tell you it was really thick. It was the first week in April, and I'm guessing it was around 7:00 p.m. So there was still some sunlight coming through the trees, but the forest the forest canopy was casting quite a few shadows. So when I would look like towards its face, I could tell its face was dark, but it was shaded just enough that I couldn't make out any details within the face. But I could see that the head was very conical shaped. The hair was a reddish brown, and on the back, I could see the back of I could see his back, and the hair was like clumped together as if it was oily or dirty or something, muddy. I don't know. And his thighs and his glutes I could see really well, because like, he wasn't like square on looking at us. It was got at an angle behind the tree, so I couldn't see how wide his shoulders were or anything like that. But I could see how like large the muscles in his legs and such were, and it was really scary. And I was telling Sarah, I was like, there it is right there. You just look at it. And she just wasn't ready to look at it. But when I would look at it, I wasn't trying to like square up with him and be challenging. So when I was looking at him, I'd be looking like this. And then sometimes I would like intentionally like kind of lower my head so that I don't look challenging. But the last time that I looked over at him, like he started like squatting low to the ground on the side of the tree, to the point where he had to have eventually started laying down on the ground. And it was shortly after that we had left. But it's hard saying when you're scared. It's hard calculating like how long of a time period it was. I don't know if it was a minute and a half. I don't know if it was 30 seconds, 45 seconds, but I would guess it was probably around a minute that I was looking at him for. Could have been a little bit longer, could have been a little bit less.
So you guys left the area more so than knowing if it left the area?
We left the area definitely before it had.
Wow. Yeah, I feel like a lot of times people, they see these things and these things move on, and they have this like story to tell where it's like, yeah, it appeared, it walked across the road, and then it left. You know, for you guys, like you're looking at this thing and you actually have to leave the area because it's not going anywhere.
Well, I mean, we did go over there to try to see if we could see one. That was the whole idea. But when it actually happens and you're seeing it in real life for the first time, I mean, I'm not afraid to admit that it was just too much for me to take in. I didn't want to be there any longer.
Yeah, no, I
He
get it.
was creating a diversion as well, and that's why he was there for so long. Because there was the chatter going on in the woods
Yeah,
to
definitely.
the other side of us. There was chatter going on, and he seemed like a diversion from the other, at least two that were talking.
So that's interesting because there's several things that you guys are describing here that sounds similar to what Wes describes in his experience. One, in a sense, these things that Wes saw were grouped together, and he talked about the one in the tree. I think it was the one in the tree that kind of, I think he even called it like, it has like this crackhead motion to it where it was like jerking back and forth, looking and stuff. Is that kind of like what you saw too, John, where it was just like that jerking back and forth motion?
Yeah, I'm looking at a half monitor of what I can see of myself, and you told me that in the full screen you can actually see more of me. So I was trying to stay within what I could see. But I mean, I'm just gonna, if you could see everything, like
Yeah.
it was like that, but way faster when it was moving, and yeah, kind of like a crackhead. As scared as I was, it wasn't like I couldn't function or anything like that, but I definitely didn't want to be challenging, and I could tell that. I'm just guessing. It looked like it was more afraid than I was, even though I was terrified. It looked at least equally as scared.
Do you feel like you might? So, I mean, it seems like you're the first generation that's on this property that at least seems to be willing to talk about this. Do you think that it's a situation where your previous generations might have had these experiences and they just didn't talk about it like you do? Because I mean, it's this.
Our neighbors have generations of stories, so they probably were just unaware. Like he mentioned the whistles, his father being unaware of that possibly being a Sasquatch. But we've got really good stories from neighbors that are a quarter mile away, of lifelong stories from them.
Really? So it's like the neighbors are also talking about this.
Yeah. And after we were first aware of them being around, there's a Indian guy on the reservation that lives in the same area that Sarah's talking about, and I'm not going to say his name, but I told Sarah, I'm going to call so and so because this guy spends more time hunting and fishing than anybody else on the reservation, and I'm going to see what he knows because there's no way that with all the time that he spends outside that he hasn't had something happen. And I talked to him, and without getting into specifics on his stories because those aren't my stories to tell. Yeah, he's had many experiences with them fishing down by the river.
His whole family,
near
though.
his property. It's like where we're at. It's not like the people that live close by here. It's not necessarily a unique position that we have.
Mm-hmm.
That's wild. Like that's so wild. I mean, to think that your situation isn't unique in that area. To the rest of the country, to the rest of the world, it's extremely unique.
Yeah.
So Sarah, I mean, you were there when he had the first sighting. You couldn't bring yourself to look. Was that out of fear or
I glanced and I didn't see it, and I didn't look again. I don't know. I wasn't ready for it, and of course, you that's a regret, but you can't go back. But I just wasn't ready for it. I wasn't fully convinced by then, even though I'd heard them so many times, and I believed him. I always believed him, it still took a lot more than that. So I just wasn't ready.
That's interesting. Yeah, I I go out looking for these things, and I don't ever consider the idea, am I ready for it, you know? Um I I don't think I told you guys this, but I had a very unique experience after the trip out there to Washington. We shot another documentary, which isn't going to be released for like a year yet. But I I had something run up on us in the woods, and uh, it after that experience, I hear people talk about how, you know, they have an experience with Bigfoot or whatever, and they can't help it. They have to dive into it. They have to go uh, deeper into the topic and try to understand it. And then some people like run away from the topic. They don't want to acknowledge it or anything. I definitely walked out of the woods that night. Like, when can I come back? Like, like I was like, I kind of want to come back like tomorrow. I don't want to leave. And it was scary in the moment for sure with what happened. But man, the adrenaline, man, that was like something on another level. So I can't imagine being on a property all the time that these things frequently come through. Uh, so that first experience happens, you guys see, or John, you see this creature, and at that point, where do you go from there? I mean, do you like start thinking about it more? Like, is it something that's like you can't shake it now? Because like it goes from, we hear it on the property, we hear these weird sounds, we hear about the stories, to I freaking saw this thing. Like, what does that do to you inside? Like, does it change you? Does it make you? I don't know. Like,
Well, at that particular time, after that had happened, like anytime I'd go outside, and I still kept spending time outside. But anytime I'd go out, I'd get like, especially if we were walking in the woods and such, in that particular area, I would get like this sick feeling to my stomach, and it wasn't like I was feeling like I was being zapped, as people explain, or anything like that. It was just like you're so afraid that you feel sick to your stomach. That's all that it was. And I would say that probably lasted for a month and a half to 2 months or so. But within a very short period of time of that sighting is when Sarah got that audio recording with her cell phone. And I don't remember how far apart those were. I would have to like see the dates on them. I don't even know if we have the date on that audio clip. I just know that one was in April as well.
do you guys save all that stuff? Like even the early audio clips that you had, that Sarah, you saved all that stuff?
But that was the first one that was ever recorded. And then for things that had happened in April after the sighting and that audio recording, there almost wasn't anything until late August and early September.
I was going to say the fall. I don't think I had heard anything until the fall,
No, it was
or recorded anything till the fall.
it was in early September. That
Oh,
that was in early September.
mhm.
And then that kind of goes into how David had gotten Sarah into recording. David Ellis, for those who don't know, he specializes in audio, and he analyzes all kinds of clips and reviews it with whatever library that he has to compare to known animals to, find something that's suspect, something that's interesting, something that's unknown.
That first one that we got was the one. It's if your listeners want to hear it, excuse me, if your listeners want to hear it, it's on our YouTube channel, Salish Sasquatch YouTube channel, and it's called Loud Bigfoot Screams, and it was recorded with a cell phone, and we believe it was about a quarter mile away, and it was yelling at something for such a long time, and we could feel it, because it was so powerful. So that one is actually, even though it was one of our first, or even though it was our first, it's one of our best. audio clips. And then that's how I got in touch with David Ellis, with that audio clip. And then he set us up with audio. He taught me everything I know about audio. And then I was able to pass that along to people like Chris Spencer. But David he's the one that started it and showed me everything, about reviewing audio, finding different voice signatures in audio. And so I began recording every night. And David would help me review the audio. And we just came across, tons of stuff. I don't really count the knocks unless it's accompanied by something, because a knock can be anything, you know. But if it was accompanied by something, we get lots of knocks, lots of rock clacks, lots of speech, howls, some whoops. So yeah, that's how I got started with the audio. And then shortly after we started audio, isn't that when we got the first thermal?
Yeah, the one that didn't have the onboard recording.
So that's the one that you didn't get recorded then.
Yeah, that's the blob squatch that we got. We took a picture through the viewfinder of this. Thermal cameras have come a really long ways, but at that time, man, it was like probably the lowest end thermal camera that you could possibly get. And I just snapped a photo. But do you want to talk about that? Because you're the one that you saw its eyes and everything.
And so on that particular night, Sarah and I were just we weren't sitting by the fire. We were just standing outside listening, and we weren't out there for very long. It was dark, and I think this was in September. As we're listening, something metallic starts banging, and we didn't know what it was at the time. I mean, we were suspecting that it was a Sasquatch based on everything else that was happening around that period. And so we had went back to the house and stood on the porch, and I got my flashlight as well as my pistol to go back over there and see what it was. And by this really big Douglas fir tree, which is an evergreen, I flashed my light, and I'm probably 25 to 40 feet away from it. And I just shined for a fraction of a second, but it was upright, and the eyes were just reflective. And as soon as my light caught those eyes, I ran back at that time. I mean, it was way too close for comfort. And Sarah had she got the thermal out, but didn't have the onboard recording, and she's looking at it, and you could tell what you're seeing from there.
Yeah, and that's when I saw one that was a little over 6 feet. It looked larger than him, and it was swaying back and forth, just swaying. And then I took a picture, snapped a photo through the viewfinder, and you just get this blob. It didn't have a conical head like like the one in the daylight photo, or the one that he saw. It was more of a rounded head, possibly a younger one or a female, maybe. But it was after we used David Ellis came over and helped us do a recreation, and it was about 6.5 feet tall.
Yeah.
About 6.5 feet.
Yeah, and we saw the next day when we went and looked to see what it could have possibly been banging on. There was this old tea kettle that was back there, like a little tea kettle pot, and it was all rusty and everything. And it was weird to see something like that just laying in the woods. Not that things like that don't get left in the woods, but I know it wasn't like left. I know we didn't leave that in the woods, so I don't know where that came from. But that's what was being banged on. And when this is happening, like we're right by the house. We're not 500 yards away. We're literally 115, 120 feet away at the time. So it's
Like, you know
it's
where
all-
our gazebo is. We're back there.
yeah, so it's all very close at that time.
These things come in so close to your house. Do they ever come up to the house at all? Have you ever had any experiences like that?
I imagine they do on one side of the house where it's very, very dark. Our daughters have had had something slap or knock on their windows. Um, and we live on a reservation and people know us, and that it just wouldn't be very smart to do that, but so we don't know what that is or who that is. But on one side of our house where it's pitch black, also where our chicken coop is, there's been some odd things. I had something slap the house last year over there. And I imagine if we left the curtains open on that side of the house, I've wondered sometimes if they come and peep, in those windows, because I mean, it's pitch black over there. There's not one light. So,
And there was another time last year or the year before, it was about midnight, and on the side of the house, the door that you guys would enter when you'd come in the house, on that side of the house, I had heard this loud bang, and it was about midnight. I mean, you could feel the bang. It was so loud. And I got my gun, went and flashlight, went outside, and I was expecting like see some things disturbed, like garbage cans and such outside. But everything was in place. It was just as if something crashed into the house right there. And there was nothing heard after that banging. But that's the extent of the banging on the house that we've had. Just several handful of times, but like she was saying, mostly on the kids' windows.
Well, listen. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I remember you guys made us breakfast and it was delicious. So maybe it was just knocking for breakfast because I think it was like egg sandwiches I don't remember what you guys made, but I just remember like this hit the spot. It was like I'm living in an RV for an entire week with a bunch of smelly guys that haven't showered. Like I was like, this is the best thing all week right here. I'd trade that breakfast for a Bigfoot sighting any day. So maybe he was just asking for some food. But speaking of food, though, I mean, you mentioned early on in this process the whole feeding thing. Did you guys steer away from that at some point because of lack of results, or what?
Every once in a while, I'll go. Yeah, we were newer at the time. Thought maybe it sounded like a good idea. We don't really do that We don't really do that anymore. But every once in a while, I'll go put I'll dump a bag of organic apples out over there. And over at that tree line where they always are. And I don't know who's getting them. I don't know what animals are. But I would like to try something else. When we were at Squatch Fest, that's the only event we go to just because we have friends come from out of town. It's like the biggest event in Washington State. And our kids have fun at it too. It's like there's vendors and everything. But anyways, we went there and where did I go with that?
Were you going to talk about that old man that you were talking about?
I'm sorry. There was this old man that I met who had same river as us, and he was having kind of a similar situation to us for a very long time, and he knew so much about them. He really impressed me. I forgot where I was going with that story.
Well, you're talking about feeding.
Oh, he told me about the apples. He said, try this. Try putting them up on a stump next time instead of on the ground. So I would like to try that. He said that he had way better results when he did that, when he took them off the ground.
Did he say why? At least why he thought?
He just said somebody told him that. And he said as soon as he started doing that, he knew that it was them taking it. And it was very often.
Wow. Interesting. Yeah, I don't know what I'd do if I had Sasquatch on my property or even passing through. as far as the feeding stuff goes. I mean, I have groundhogs that eat my garden that tick me off. I don't know if I want Bigfoot, having a platter waiting for him, but it's interesting. I was wondering, from this time that you guys are at right now with the experience, you guys just shared about that first thermal. At what point in the timeline does I assume the second thermal comes in place where it is on video and you guys were able to capture it on thermal with that cow walking in front and stuff? Because I mean that is one of the most impressive thermals I've ever seen. I mean, it's up close. You see the shoulders, the head. I mean, and with the animal walking in front of it, it kind of gives you a gauge as to how large it is. And I was really happy with us being able to get drone shots of the property, because when you guys were talking about this experience, we were able to actually show generally where this took place, to be able to show the steep drop off that this thing was standing, and to kind of give an idea of how large this actually was. I mean, it was not a tiny little thing. It wasn't a little monkey.
So after that thermal picture was taken and David had came out and done recreations and such, it wasn't too long after that. I don't think it was immediately after that, but within weeks afterwards, that they had lent us the device that did have onboard recording. And at the time, it was a pretty expensive device. I want to say it was like $10,000. So, do you want me to go into that? Okay.
Absolutely.
So, after we hadn't had it for that long, my brother Ben and I would, look through it and stuff like that. But we weren't we weren't even actually recording with it at all. And in hindsight, we should have been doing a lot more playing around with it and figuring out knowing exactly, because you see a record button, but when you record, if you just push it the first time, then it's taking snapshots. If you're holding it down, then it's taking video. Well, so that first incident, then you were asking what the time difference was. That was early September. Then we go to end of October 30th. It was about 11:30 or so. And earlier that day, there was this rancher who was leasing the fields behind us. He was leasing that from the tribe. And he was hauling off a bunch of cattle. And the cows that were remaining, like they were just whining and making all kinds of like cow screams and stuff like that. And it just sounded like, I mean, they were just putting on a big show, just not content at all, super loud. And in the midst of that, around 11:30, I hear this tapping over by that berm that drops down against one of the trees. So I grabbed the thermal camera and I was looking over there, and I saw like what looked like to be like a human shaped head, like laying towards the ground. I mean, I could see all of the cows that were around, but this was different. This was looked like a person that was laying on the ground at first. So then I'm looking at the camera, trying to figure out which is which. And then but when I'm getting ready to record, he's changed position. So he's no longer laying down. He's behind that berm, and you're looking at him from the chest up at that point. And so I'm thinking that I'm recording him. And then I realize that it's not recording. What I'm doing is taking snapshots. I hand the camera over to my brother Ben, and then he gets it recording for 2 minutes and 25 seconds or 2 minutes and 30 seconds, whatever it was. And then the camera just automatically shut down. David Ellis told me that the camera has an automatic shutdown feature, but I've also heard my friend Kirk say, no, it was the batteries that you guys were using. So I don't know which story is correct, but I tend to think that David probably is right, that it had the auto shutdown feature, because we were able to get it going again. But by the time we got it going again, it was gone. Couldn't see anything.
Did you ever hear it leave, or it was just gone?
We didn't hear anything as far as it leaving.
Wow. That's interesting. these things are so large and you don't actually hear them moving a lot of times. I find that weird, and I'm not going to go woo woo on you guys. I'm going to let that go. I'm not going to say it went into a portal or anything like that. I'm not going to say it was abducted by an alien. I just
Well, it was
did.
kind of confusing that too, because the cows weren't very quiet at that time. The cows were still being loud, and so that's probably a good reason why we didn't hear it, moving off.
So I think that the idea of the thermal just shutting off on a timer, I don't think that's wrong. I just think it's dumb. Like, what would be the technological reason for that to happen? Did David ever say? Because I mean, it's like, why would I want my camera to shut off at a certain point when I'm recording?
I don't know that was the case.
I don't know that was the case either, because there was this ring around the lens that it had some type of, it had to get sent back into FLIR. I think did David send it in, or did Kirk send it in? Somebody had sent it back into FLIR to get corrected, but there was something that was wrong with it at the time. But I don't know if that had anything to do with it shutting off.
It's a brick now. You wouldn't want to get footage with that thermal unless it was 30 or 40 feet away, because otherwise you're just looking at a blob.
Yeah, I here locally, I have a friend who does a lot of this kind of stuff, going out looking for things, and him and I go. He's actually coming to the studio tomorrow. We're going to record, and then we might, if I have time, go out, searching for whatever we find our hands to do. And he does thermal imaging through his phone. He records thermal images through some kind of I don't know if it's an app or an adapter or something he puts on his phone, but he actually gets thermal images through his phone, and he's recorded probably about 30 minutes from here, something upright, walking back and forth, pacing back and forth on the one dam here, and he's recording, and this thing, you see the body turn towards him, and it's really clear, and it starts walking towards him. And that's when he's just like, and he books it out of there because he can't see it. Outside the thermal, he can't see anything. It's completely dark out. And he booked it and left and stuff. And, I'm sure he's gotten flack for that. What are you doing out there if you can't handle it, and why are you running? But listen, man, when these things are there and it's walking towards you, I can't fault you for running. What would you have done if that thing started crawling up over the ditch towards you? Would you have run, or would you stand your ground and I'm gonna film this till the camera dies?
I would have been too scared to do that.
Right. Exactly. I mean, I would be, I would be changing my pants every day that week. Like every time I think about it, I'm like, oh gosh, I gotta go change my pants again. It just would have scared the crap out of me. So yeah, again, going to Wes, he always says, be careful what you ask for. Right. And so he told me that before we went out to his location, he's like, be careful what you're asking for, because once you see, you can't take it back. And, I don't know if you guys know, we did have experience. Actually, yeah, because I think I sent you the documentary, so you saw some of the experiences. One of the experiences that didn't make the cut in there, because it didn't get caught on the video side of things, was Wes talks about how in his vehicle that night they had the growls, and he could feel it. It felt like it was almost in the back seat. Well, we have the experiences going, the knocking on the wall and all that stuff. And we're outside and we're all getting ready to go back on the RV. And Joel and I are the last ones in line getting on. We only had one cameraman. We learned our mistakes. We're bringing more than one cameraman moving forward. But Joel and I were last to get on, and Ward was on the trail or on the RV already, I guess, getting ready to film guys coming on or whatever. And we heard, it was like we felt the growl. I have a hard time saying we heard the growl. We definitely heard it, but it was like you felt it. It was like it was right there. And him and I both turned around to look, expecting to see something, and there was nothing there. And so, yeah, it's one of those things where it didn't make the film because there was nothing to share. I can tell the story, but there's nothing to see. And so, Anyways, that's my ADHD taking over. Let me reel back to your property. So, the thermal, you guys have that thermal. At what point did you guys, and I'm not sure where in the timeline this goes for you guys, but the two things that kind of stick out in my head a lot is the headshot, the daytime headshot that you have, but also this has actually slipped my mind until I was watching the documentary when you were talking to me, Sarah, when I was there about I don't know if I want to call it eye shine, eye glow, I don't know, but the red eyes that you had seen. Which one came first?
The red eyes.
Really?
Yeah, red eyes came first.
And so what happened there? I'm assuming that was nighttime if you saw the red eyes and nothing else.
Yeah, that was at nighttime. My mother-in-law, who was with us, came in, got us, and said, there's Sasquatch are howling across the street. So we went outside, and there was just this group. We would refer to them as a rogue group. I don't know how else to describe it. It was like a certain behavior that we would get from this group that would pass through for those few years. What was it, 2012 through 14 were the busiest years, the craziest years. This group would come through and just give us like weird behavior. This is our Turf Wars audio clip, shows you a recording of that type of behavior. Again, that's on our channel. But I walk outside, and out of my peripheral, I see a red light. And I look over right away, and I see these two red eyes looking at me. And just staring at me. They looked like little lights, little Christmas lights, little red lights. And he started walking off while looking at me, walking the fence line. And then I saw both eyes blink at me, and then, just keep walking. But it creeped me out. And that's the only time I've ever seen that. I've seen little white, eye glow here and there. We'd be outside and we'd hear something, and you'd see something by the tree. You never know what that is. That could be any type of animal. But I've never seen eye glow other than that time. Then later on was the photo. That was the daylight photo. Actually, Wes was here either the night before that. Yeah, I think Wes was here the night before that. We were recreating a thermal video that we got the night before. Shannon LeGros was over as well. And something was either popping its head up or running on a down tree. So we were doing a recreation, Shannon and I took a picture with my Sony Handycam just to try to line up the trees to see where we were standing. Never used the picture. The creature ended up being something small on a down tree. Almost a year later, I pop in that SD card because I was clearing files for audio recording. And I saw from the thumbnail, I saw his head. And it that changed everything for me. That solidified everything for me was that moment. I had no idea that they looked like that either. But even after seeing one, so when I saw one through the thermal that was swaying, there's still something cartoonish about that, right? About seeing this glowing blob. You're not seeing it. It's not like a daylight sighting. It's not the same thing. And so there still was always part of me that held on to, I think I mentioned this in your film, that, I just wasn't fully convinced until that photo.
Changed everything. It would change everything for me too. That photo, it really, and you said this in the film, how it's like it's the focal point of the picture. And
Yeah.
do you feel like it almost looks like he's posing in the picture? Do you feel like that, or do you think it's like it was just peeking and you captured the picture? Like, I mean, it could have been just peeking over, or just watching you, and you just it was that super stealthy, and you just didn't notice it.
And that's still they'll play this still game all day, it seems. If they have to be still, they will be still. And um like you said, he's the focal point of the picture. And that is exactly where the creature in the thermal the night before was popping up and down, was that same spot. And both Shannon and I had no clue he was there. Now, the day before, Shannon and I were walking around in the wooded area behind where he is in the photo. And her and I are walking this fence line, and something, I call it Sasquatch creeping, typical Sasquatch behavior when uh, uh, camp camp encounters or wherever people are talking at the campfire, and they come in when you're talking or making noise or whatever. And as soon as you stop, they stop. And then you start talking again, then they come in, just they'll creep for days if they have to and just be quiet when they have to be quiet. Shannon and I are walking this fence line and we can hear something pacing us. And we would be talking and walking, and you would hear these footfalls. And as soon as we would stop, it would stop. And at one point, her and I dropped down where this heavy brush area was, and we could hear it. It seriously took this thing 10 minutes to just come 4 steps, trying to see us. And our legs were shaking at that point. We were like, I can't squat anymore. So we got up and walked, but we thought that it was possible that maybe that was a Sasquatch. It was either a Sasquatch or a person. I think I'd rather have it be a Sasquatch.
I was just gonna say, like, if it was a person, you gotta start questioning your neighbors and what are they doing?
Yeah. But that was just the day before that photo was taken.
Wow. The photo is super clear, and again, like, I mean, you guys have been able to capture some of the most, in my mind, some of the best evidence that people have been able to capture. A lot of times you're squinting a lot of pictures, and not to say that what people claim is in a picture isn't there. It's just, it's not clear like you guys have it clear, and it leaves room for the doubting. The thermal imaging, this head popping over the bushes or trees, whatever that was, I don't even remember, but it was high up because you tried recreating it, and I remember something about 7 feet. Were the bushes 7 feet 5 in the air?
Yeah, standing on a tree, the top of my hand, it was 7.5 feet tall, roughly, where his head was, where the top of his head was.
That's crazy. I mean, it makes you like, because Jonathan saw one that he estimates like 6'8" ish, and this being
that was hunched over.
That's 6 to 8, like being hunched over, like moving around like that.
And he describes the conical cartoon head, just like the photo as well. And he described the or he says, like the matting and stuff or whatever. So it's possible that it's the same one.
Very possible.
It seems like after recording for such a long time, you get to know the voices and who's who. And it seemed that there were 3. A male, one that sounded more like a female, and then one that we can only assume is a younger one because of its behavior, the stuff it would say.
So you think it's like a family group? I know you mentioned the road group earlier.
Yeah, we haven't heard them though. We've just recently started recording audio again. So I'm hoping to capture those sounds late in the night because there's something, he says there's something about, what hours do you say?
Well, I mean, I think that like between 11 o'clock and 3 in the morning is probably like your best times to have something happen. And I think that's based on a lot of the audio recordings that we have recorded. I mean, yes, we've heard many prior to those hours, even midday, but it seems like the later, like 11 o'clock and later, you're a lot more likely to have something happen. And when we go back to the stuff that happened between 2012 and 2014, there's a big difference of like our behavior during that time, because we were spending so much time outside that we'd get completely, well, not necessarily Sarah, but I would spend so much time outside that, like, even on work nights, like sometimes I would be listening until midnight, 12:30, and just seeing what would happen. And when after that goes on for a year and a half, 2 years, it's really easy to get burned out. So the main thing is, like, it's pretty uncommon for us to stay out that late anymore. Like past midnight, hardly ever, except for like maybe exceptions for like when you guys came over and a couple other times. But so that's why a lot of our experiences had, why we were aware of so much between 2012 and 2014. So if we were staying out that late still, I don't know if it's possible the same amount of activity would happen. I think it's possible. It's just that when you're not there, you're not somebody. If you're not something for something to come in and look at, then there might not be any point in them vocalizing or doing anything, making any type of knocks, rock clacks, communicating to one another. Like, hey, let's see what this guy's up to. And that's only a guess, but they still come around. And so with when you take us out of the pictures, being there late, that's the only thing that makes sense to me.
That's interesting. So, I always had the sense that maybe activity died off after a while, but maybe it's more I don't want to say interest, but you said burnout. I can imagine, like, at some point it's like you don't have to prove anything to yourself or the world. It's like we know they're here, and at some point, do you just like, yeah, kind of want to sit on the couch tonight and not sit outside? Did that, you mentioned the burnout? Did the burnout feel like? Did you get to a point where you felt like you were obligated to go out there, and that's where the burnout came from, or was it just the repetition of just doing it over and over again? You're just like, I'm kind of tired of doing this.
It was a more of like an adrenaline rush than anything when something would happen. So that would keep me going outside, to see if anything would happen. But then after a while, must have been 2015 or 2016, there was a period of 3 or 4 years that, like, just didn't want to have anything to do with Bigfoot altogether. Just burned out on the subject. Then after having a cooling off period, I mean, it's not that it was never not interesting to us. It's just that when you're doing something all the time, you can overdo it some.
No, I perfectly understand that. It's just it's interesting because I can relate with that. I mean, in my own way, with a lot of things that I do. Even with podcasting. I mean, I do, it's my job. It transitioned from something that was a hobby to something that, hey, I can pay my electric bill this month with what my hobby. And then all of a sudden you transition into, hey, this is the job now. There is no plan B. It's not like I can go drive a truck again tomorrow, and if this falls apart, it's okay. I still got my job. This is my job. And when you have that kind of responsibility with it, I don't want to say it's burnout, but it's not what it used to be, as far as like you can be wishy-washy with it. If I don't feel like doing it, I can always just put it down. If I did that now, it's like, well, we're talking about a whole career change now, and trying to find something else to do. So I can kind of, in my own way, understand where you're coming from. It kind of backtracking a little bit to the red eyes, because we kind of glossed over that, and I just kind of want to hit on it a little bit because I can't help myself. Like, talk to me about how you view and define these creatures, knowing you saw red glowing eyes. And feel free to do it any way you want. We all know how Tony thinks about these things. I look at these things. I think that they're more supernatural creatures than they are just hairy wandering around the woods. You don't have to agree with me, but I can't let the red eye glow go before we stop a recording. Tell me what goes through your mind when you tell somebody, yeah, I saw Bigfoot and it had red glowing eyes. What are you thinking in that moment?
Well, I'm thinking that they don't believe me. It makes a lot of people uncomfortable, but it's very common. I was just talking to, I don't know if you know who Scott Taylor is. He's with the BFRO. He's done more reports in Washington State than anybody. He just has collected so much data over the years that he's really good at behavior. And he says, that the red eyes is so common, but I don't know. I don't understand the red eyes. I think it has something to do with maybe some sort of being able to see at night or something. I don't know. But I do think that as for Sasquatch, people put it like in all of these different places. Like you've got a great ape, you've got ancient people, you've got something that walks between worlds, you've got the Nephilim, you've got all these different things, but I just think it's a Sasquatch. And I think that if we just look at it as its own thing, as a Sasquatch, I feel like we'll get somewhere with it and understand that it does have these things that are just its own. Kind of like an octopus. An octopus can do some crazy stuff. A Sasquatch can do some crazy stuff too. So I don't know what they are. I have no clue what they are. I've never seen. For a while, I was a little uncomfortable with the subject because I was hearing all these things, of what it could be or whatever. And then I had to back up and realize that I've never seen it do anything supernatural. I don't know that the red eye glow. I can't say that that's a supernatural thing that it's doing. I have no clue the science behind that red eye glow. All I know is I saw it, and that a lot of other people see red eye glow as well.
Well, I think the red eye glow is supernatural. That's I think when I first started the podcast, because you guys were some people I wanted to talk to since I started the podcast, and I remember. I don't remember where it was. I almost want to say it was it Josh Peck? Did you do a show with Josh Peck?
A long time ago.
Yeah. I think I remember watching that or listening to it. I was driving or something, and talking to somebody or reading online somewhere, I got the sense that like you guys were no longer on the table for a conversation with Bigfoot. Like you guys disconnected or you didn't want to talk about it anymore or something. And I was just like, well, that stinks. But
about for a while.
Yeah. And there's probably a lot of reasons for that.
Right.
And I can totally understand. I'm just glad that I had the opportunity to be on your property, talk with you guys, eat your breakfast, have you on the Confessionals, like mission complete. I don't know how often I'll ever make it to Washington State. But if I'm ever around you guys, I will be calling you and be like, hey, I'm going to be in your neck of the woods next week. You mind if I swing by and just, stop by the fire a little bit and just hang out, exist in the environment? I'm telling you, it was something that we didn't have. How do I say this? When people see us doing things on film, they're actually experiencing us learning in the moment what our process is on things. And it wasn't until we met you guys that we were able to verbalize how we feel on how to approach these things. The idea, and I've said it countless times now. I think we've said it on the next documentary we went to, existing in the environment, being human in the environment. That is a formula that I can't get away from, because so many times people have experiences when they're just not expecting it. They're just being human. And we've really tried to adopt that in our own way. Like it kind of makes for a boring documentary for guys just to sit around the fire the whole time, but like the idea to be just natural. And, we don't go out there with Ouija boards to begin with and stuff and try summoning the Bigfoot or whatever. But, we don't want to catch any of that. But we really tried to adopt that, like on the last time we did that a few times. And the last night we built this fire on this big trail that was cut out, and we just kind of chilled. We sent Joel off on his own. Go do your thing, Joel, and come back and report. And then me and Joel went out together, and that's when the crazy stuff happened. But for that night, we did a lot of just chilling, and we had things happen,
Is that when you guys were at Wes's spot?
Yeah.
No. So what I was just talking about was on a documentary after the one we shot with you guys. We shot this one in Kentucky and Tennessee. The Wes's was that as well, though. We were in the RV talking about what we were going to do, not paying attention to what's going on around us. And every time we just started, the guys talking, and we're not, usually me, I crack a joke and then we start getting veered off and we're not focused. That's when stuff started happening. And when we cracked that door open, I think it was to Joel was going to go walking up the road there to where Wes had the actual sighting. Man, that smell, it hit. It hit. We smelled it. And I don't remember it in my head, the timeline of how it all happened, but I'm pretty sure that was probably, I think it was after we had the knocking on the wall and the whistle. And when you mentioned the whistle, Jonathan, the way you did that sounded just like how Christian whistled in the documentary of what he heard outside. And it was really cool because we were in there and we were filming, not like intentionally, but we were just talking, and Ward had the camera filming, and we caught the knocks, we caught the whistles, we caught the whoops, we got all that. And I was just like, man, I'm really glad Ward had that camera rolling, because at some of the spots you could tell like Ward wasn't even really focused on where he was shooting the camera. He just had it on and was kind of pointing at Joel. And like when the whole knocking thing happened, that's an exchange between me and Joseph, who are off camera, but we actually were able to catch it because he was recording. So yeah, it was just existing in that environment and seeing what happens. And another thing is, the name of the documentary is Sasquatch and the Missing Man, and we came across that missing person case. Since then, there's been new developments in that case that leaves you wondering what actually happened to John, because they've recently found human remains up there. But here's the problem: they didn't find these human remains when they swept the area looking for John. We reported it. They organized a search party, and they found 4 dead bodies up there, and none of them were John. And then recently, they found more body parts up there, and they suspect it might be John. But I'm thinking to myself, you didn't find it the first time, and why is this one different? You're not calling this a body you found. You're saying you found a human skull and human remains around the skull. Like, what is going on at Sunset Falls? Is it Bigfoot? Is it illegal activity where people are dumping dead bodies? I don't know. All I know is I'm really glad I didn't trip over somebody's dead body one night. Like, that would have been, I don't even know if I could have put that in the film, to be honest with you, legally. So, like, people that take my word on it. I fell on top of a dead body. Like, where's the footage? I don't believe you. Can't show you. Typical.
As for existing in their environment, Our friend Ron Leatherman told us that he went on a Bigfoot expedition one time. And he said that they got there, I think 2 nights prior to the expedition. And they were just acting like campers and they were getting activity both nights. He said when everybody arrived there for the expedition and everybody started putting on their, red lights and stuff like that, he said all activity stopped. As soon as they let them know that they were looking for them, and doing all these whoops and red lights in the woods, the Sasquatch weren't having it. He said not one blip of activity after that.
Wow.
That goes to show you there too, even going from human to like aware of them and actively seeking them, like they know.
Oh yeah. Recently, I forget why he was down here, but Joel had come down here to Tennessee, and it was the night before. I think we were recording something here at the studio with somebody, and the night before, to kill time, me, Jack, and Joel went out to the location where we got charged at, and it was downpouring rain. And I was like, they're like, I could tell, like, we were all like, oh, do we really want to do it? Like, I want to do it, but do I want to do it in the rain? And, I was like, you know what, we're going to freaking go do this. And so we went out there till like 2-3 o'clock in the morning, downpouring rain. We're not filming because I'm not taking one of my cameras out in the rain. Somebody else can volunteer that job. My cameras aren't getting wet. And so we're just kind of hiking around. We didn't have headlamps. We had flashlights that we didn't have on the whole time because we were just trying to let our eyes adjust to things. And it was pretty, as far as I remember, is pretty dead until our hike back. And that's when I would say we were pretty close to my truck, when we started here. First, Joel, he was like wigged out because something ran behind us, and it was like so close to him that, like he said, it felt like it should have touched him, and it like went from one side of the trail to the other. And so we turn on the lights and we start shining our flashlights. You don't see anything, you don't hear anything, you just keep walking, and then we hear something on our left side, and it's something like I don't know if it was a tree break, a tree snap or something. It wasn't a windy night, and that whole night we weren't hearing like down trees or anything. It sounded like something either heavy, like stepped on a thick branch and snapped it. It was like lower, and it was like almost intentional. It sounded like intentional, and that got us that got us on high alert. But again, that activity happened when we weren't filming, and we were just 3 dorks walking through the woods in the middle of the night in a downpouring rain. Like we weren't very threatening, I'd say. And I don't know what it was. We never laid eyes on anything. But it all started after Joel felt like, he's like, dude, something just ran behind me. Like it was right there. Like he really thought something was going to touch him.
What were you guys arriving at? Like, were you thinking that it was Sasquatch when it did happen?
This area that we go to has it's a magical place. I don't even know how to describe it to people other than it's magical. There's been reports of Bigfoot in the area, Dogman in the area, portals opening up, UFOs. Like this place is, I don't know how else to describe it. It's magical, man. Like it's really, it's special to me. It's an area that I'm sure you guys have been familiar. You've heard of Scott Carpenter. He's passed away now. But I mean, he lived 10 minutes from my studio, and he lived 10 minutes from my house. He lived between my studio and house, and it's an area that he frequented, and he had a lot of experiences in there. And he always told me, he's like, if I ever take you to this area, it's like, he said, be ready. And I never got a chance to get out there with him before he passed away. And his son Travis kind of gave his, not kind of, he gave his, the blessing for us to kind of go out there. I didn't want to be disrespectful, you know, like it's not like his dad's property or anything, but I just didn't want to be that guy, you know? And Travis gave his blessing. He's like, no, I think that's what my dad would want. And so I went out there, and when we had that experience, I was hooked. And I told Travis, I was like, dude, like I can't, I gotta go back. And it's just been one of those things where I go back and I go back and I go back. And I can't say I've ever laid eyes on whatever the it is. But I know the history of the area. I know that it's the same. These woods are the same woods that Les Stroud had his mind speak in. Les Stroud's out there filming Survivor Man Bigfoot, and he's in the woods, and he has this mind speak where I don't want to quote. I'll mess up the quote, but it was something like, "We're over this ridge if you want to come see us." And he said, "I'm not ready for that." And he didn't go. It's these woods, and he didn't talk about it on the show. It was years later till he started talking about it. But like, that's what I mean. Like, these woods they're special. There's something about it, and I love going there. I'm hooked on it, and maybe I'm hooked on it because I've never actually seen what you guys have seen. Maybe I'd be like, we'll keep our distance. You know, like if I saw what Wes saw that night and the way it acted and everything, maybe I would have had my fill too, but I haven't had my fill. And before I started podcasting, this is what I did. I just went out in the woods by myself, just walking around aimlessly, hoping that I lay eyes on the Squatch. And, you know, I diverted from that for years to build the podcast. And here I am circling back around to I find myself just looking for whether it's Bigfoot, the dog man, whatever these things are that people are seeing. Like I talk to so many people, and I'm like, yeah, I'm hearing these patterns in people's stories. Like I mentioned about you guys and similarities between your experience and Wes's. And I'm just like, I gotta see this thing. I can't shake that feeling. Like I'm not old, but I'm not young either. I'm 38. Like I am pushing 40, and I'm acting like a kid sometimes with this. I'm like, I just want to go out there on this adventure and hunt monsters. Like I don't know how else to do it. Like I'm totally hooked on the hunt. And that might bite me in the butt one day. I don't know. But there's a lot of people out there that have seen them and don't regret it. But then, you know, one of my best friends sees it and he regrets it. Like he doesn't want to see that again. Not at all. And you know, like we talked to a lady in Portland. Yeah, Mount Hood's in Portland, right? Or in Oregon, right? Mount Hood?
Yeah, it's just outside of Portland.
Okay, so yeah, she had seen something. Let's just call it something, because she was uncomfortable calling it Bigfoot. But she saw they were going to look for mushrooms, and she sees somebody pounding away at the trees and stuff. And she thought it was some guy in a hood, and this thing stands up, faces her, and then it drops down on all four, but backwards. So like its torso is facing upwards and its head is still looking at her. And then it walks backwards up Mount Hood, and or the hill or whatever. I don't think it went up Mount Hood, but like, that's really freaky. If I saw that, I may never want to go out there again, but I didn't see it. I see it in my mind, and I can't help myself but want to go out there to have this experience. And, you know, maybe one day I'll regret it. I don't know. Maybe I won't show up one week. Maybe I'll just be like I'm just gone. And they're like, what happened to Tony? The Squatch got him. The Squatch freaking got him. And I just become this like myth, like, you know, like whatever happened to that guy? And some people say he left his wife, you know, so he was a deadbeat dad, and he just didn't want to be around his family. He just disappeared and pretended to be killed by Squatch. So, you know, I don't know, but listen, I think life is a journey. We only get one shot at it, and I just want to have fun doing it and seeing where it goes. And I find it a huge honor to have been able to meet with you guys and see you face to face on the property, and just see some of these locations that you hear about. And I just appreciate the time you guys have spent with us on this process of making the documentary. It meant a lot to us, for sure.
Yeah, thanks for having us in.
Thank you.
Let me ask you a question before we get out of here. I want to give you an opportunity, one, to tell people about your YouTube channel again, and let people know where they can find it. It will be in the description of this episode. So anybody who hears it and they want to see they want to hear the vocalizations, anything you guys got on the YouTube channel, it will be in the link of the description.
Oh, Salish Sasquatch on YouTube. It's the Salish Sasquatch channel. You just type in Salish, Salish, like the Salish tribes. Salish Sasquatch on YouTube.
Gotcha. See, that's the first time that I heard you say that. So the Salish tribes, because I was wondering, how do you come up with Salish Sasquatch? It's a tribe. I didn't know that.
Well, the Salish tribes are basically, it's a region of different tribes. So essentially, like all of the tribes from lower British Columbia all the way to, I think it extends down to Northern California. Like that region of tribes are Salish tribes.
Gotcha.
It's not one specific tribe. It's like a region.
Now it makes sense. Now it makes sense. Perfect. Well, again, Mr. and Mrs. Brown, I appreciate you guys joining me on the Confessionals. I always wanted to say that. Well, that's the show, everybody. I really hope you enjoyed it. And if you did enjoy it, please go ahead, share the show with your friends. I don't care where or how you share the show. Just share the show. That's the best thing you do to help the show grow. Share the show. And if you're interested, go ahead and check out the tickets for moment.co/Sasquatch. That's where we're going to be premiering our new film, Sasquatch and the Missing Man. If you're interested in seeing that film, the Browns, their property in that film, the location where Wes had his Bigfoot encounter, and other things, make sure you're there at the premiere on May 5th, moment.co/Sasquatch. Get your tickets there. And on May 5th, you can watch it right there live with all of us. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. And until next week, stay safe, take care, and remember, the truth will set you free, but first it'll piss you off. Bye. Awakened from the forest in the depths of the abyss, this creature is a paradigm of time lost and time itself. It fears no one. It adheres to no rule that man can create. It forges its own path, and yet its path remains hidden from the world. The sphere of its existence is beyond most comprehension as it exudes its power quietly but transcendent. It needs no one's approval to exist, but yet its very existence is sought after by many. It watches. It learns. Adapts to the ever-changing environment around it, even as the environment is wrought with corruption. It battles the corruption only when pressed or for the protection of others like it. It is a mirage that few will ever understand. It's a cornucopia of knowledge from an era long past. It's free. It's Bigfoot.
My fantasies always consisted of making it big. My soul was nothing more than a bargaining chip. Marketing is what they tell you to do and what you're willing to give. LARPing to the fullest extent. I don't wait, I shoot first like Han on a Rodian. These people don't understand me like reading a Nokian. Stretched thin, like pulling an accordion. My heart ain't primordium. All these historians telling us lies, setting aside. Everything is medicalized. Politicians selling the ride. I bet 'em a die where the relevance lies. They dressing alike, reptilians. My resilience is brilliant. I'm here to lead the rebellion on Hellion, salient, alien with no melanin.